With week 12 of the college football playoff season in the books, we now only have 2 official weeks left in the regular season, not counting championship week. But right now, we've seen teams that are continuing to jock for position in the top 10, while others are continuing to claw their way up, while watching others fall down. Added to that list after week 12. The scores and results of week 12 up next. And what's next? After the AP polls were released, before the College Football Playoff Committee will reconvene to decide the fate. Just 3 weeks remaining. We discuss all these on this edition of Gridiron Gab Triple Option. Thank you all so much for joining us here on another edition of Gridiron Gab Triple Option. Of course, you're gabbing here with the one and only Mr. CeeLo, and I hope you guys are doing great. I hope all of you are safe and enjoying the weather that we've had the last couple of weeks. It's been actually pretty pleasant, of course, in the afternoon, but we definitely have to be grateful that the hot weather is gone. It's been some pretty good football weather, but it's just gotten cold way too fast. At least for me, anyway. But as I am shooting this show, I am getting breaking news that James Franklin has accepted the position of head coach at Virginia Tech. So that is one major domino that has fallen, at least coach-wise. Many of you don't see James Franklin as possibly a major domino. I do, despite the fact that many of you need to remember where that program was at when he took over. He got it back to where it is absolutely relevant. You have to exclude this season, but he did a great job getting this program back on track, and we hope and wish the best for him in his venture. Before we get started, I'd like to have a moment with you guys to discuss with you our sponsor for today's show.
Guys, we now officially have our first sponsor, and it is one of my favorite products. It's called the Effing Man. He builds it, fixes it, lifts it, breaks it, then builds it again. The world calls him a man. We call him an effing man. TF Man, the lotion made for the hands that earn it. Crafted from grass-fed tallow, squalene, and grit. No flowers, no fluff, just results. You know the type. The man who shows up. The man who gets it done. The one who doesn't need a filter, a hashtag, or permission. He's not just a man. He's an effing man. How many of you know an effing man? And now he's got the lotion to match. TF Man. The whipped tallow cream from LV, made from grass-fed beef, squalane, and pure grit. No chemicals, no perfume, just hard-earned hydration for hands that build, lift, and live. LV is all-natural skincare, rebuilt for real people. TF Man, because being the effing man means taking care of your own damn skin.
I love this stuff. I was just talking to the people that actually make this stuff, and they are some really good people. They actually have some more interesting things for me to add. So they're adding more things to their shop. So please make sure you take that QR code and you actually go on their shop, online store, and you see what they have. And by the way, gentlemen, they don't just have things for us. They have some things for your beautiful, significant half, or better half for some of you. Because, some guys don't consider their other half their better half. That wouldn't be me, but, there are some guys that would say that. On the way. But, guys, make sure you go over there. It's coming up on Christmas. It's be a great gift for your loved one and for yourself. TF Man by LV. You deserve it for being the effing man. Now let us get to business. Let's see. Of course, I got to say what's up to my buddy Brad. What's going on, brother? Ain't much, brother. I'm just busy. Just got it going on. You guys have just been hitting me up, and I've just been insanely busy. Let's see. Let's go to what Brad had to say. What's up, buddy? I know Indy still rocks, man. I know it. The effing man. That's right, brother. The man effing Brad. Man, why don't you say that right? The effing man, Brad. What, you talking like Yoda now? The man, I'll take my steak rare. Go Dogs. That depends on who's cooking it rare. Because I got to have that thing seared on the top, seared on both sides, with a whole bunch of garlic. And yeah. My wife got me on that. I ain't gonna lie to you. I don't say it enough, but I do appreciate my wife and I love her. But she is definitely the one that got me on eating a steak pretty much almost rare. But I'm usually medium rare, somewhat rare. I mean, it just depends on who's cooking it. Daddy always wins. What? I am the OG of Gab. That's debatable. Because little brother Georgia Tech is carrying the ACC on its shoulders. I agree. I totally agree. The effing man, the Dogs. Texas. Boy, stop. Haynes King for Heisman. I agree. I'm with you. Horns down, laughing. LMAO. Okay. Well, they're gone. That's all I cared about. You want ND? Boy, stop. You don't want none of this. I seen an Indeed job search. Texas looking for a quarterback. Boy, stop. You can't blame all that on daggum. Boy, I tell you what. Kobe Young is hurt, brother. Been out for 2 weeks. Not good. Haters gonna hate. Go Dogs. You got to have something to be hating on. They ain't got nothing to hate on. You wrong again. Go Dogs. Woo! Be careful. Be careful. Because right now, I was looking at Josh Pate. And he says it's looking like we going to meet y'all. And guess who he predicted was going to win? And then he got his face in Alabama in the excuse me, in the I think it was like you got the semis, and then you got the quarter. I think he said we were gonna meet y'all in the semis, and then we were gonna lose I think it was Alabama. I think it was. Yeah. Either way, I said, okay, how we gonna beat Georgia and lose to Alabama? Stop it. But let us get going, as we got a little bit to do, and Mr. CeeLo is tired, and then I got to do a few things. I know y'all don't want to hear all that, but we discussed Oregon's 42-13 win over Minnesota, and Clemson's 20-19 win over upset of Louisville. as we've already seen what happens when Miller Moss does not play well. You get results like this, and now Clemson's up to 5-5 and looking to get back into a playoff. Into a bowl. So Louisville has pretty much lost its opportunity to play in the ACC title game. So needless to say, this is a huge break and opportunity for Virginia and Miami actually. Because when you look at the way this game went down, is you seeing a lot of these teams in the ACC, and I don't want to spend too much time on that because, needless to say, right now the ACC is not looking very relevant here. And I'm not trying to be mean. Anybody that's an ACC fan, I'm not trying to be mean. But when you look at the way this thing goes down, you got Pittsburgh having to face off against Tech this week, and then they got Miami. So if Tech was to beat this team, or even if Tech was to beat Pittsburgh, and Miami was to come out and knock them off next week, and somehow or another, when you look at where you've got Virginia and SMU, whom SMU faces off against Louisville this weekend. So very well, Louisville could play spoiler to SMU, who surprisingly only has one loss in the conference. They have quietly been one of those teams that has just snuck back in here, and they're in this thing. Whereas Virginia has the easiest route. They've only got Virginia Tech left. I'm not saying that Virginia Tech couldn't play spoiler, but you look at the way things are going, and you got SMU, who's got that one loss, but they've got California to finish. They've got Louisville. Basically, this is one of those games that could be a battle. That could be a battle to see who gets in. Whereas you've got Miami, who, as I said, Pittsburgh has the toughest task. They've got to knock off and they've got to knock off Miami at the end of the season. But then you got this week, Miami's got Virginia Tech. So when you look at where this conference is going, Georgia Tech will finish up its conference play this week at Pitt. With hosting Pitt. So needless to say, this is going to get very interesting real fast. If you get a Pittsburgh win and it knocks Georgia Tech down, so that leaves SMU and Virginia left trying to decide which team is going to take that coveted position. And I'm not sure how that tiebreaker is. Mr. CeeLo will have to go back and he'll have to check. I think they go by how teams don't play each other. I think they have to go by who's ranked the highest. I'm not sure. Don't quote me on that. But I'm going to get some more information on that because Georgia Tech controls its own destiny with a win. So I think if Pittsburgh knocks them off, and then you've got an SMU team sitting here with one loss, and they can knock off Louisville. But Louisville can make things so much easier, being that they could go to Dallas and win this game. But nothing's easy in the ACC, guys. But let's move on, as Ohio State without a Nico Iamaleava, who was a late scratch. 48-10, and as you got to see the UCLA Bruins come out and really not put up much of a fight. I mean, you don't want to be mean, but unfortunately, it is what it is. Ohio State is not going to get any resistance up until probably Michigan, but then that's even, you have to put up a very resounding argument because, needless to say, Michigan lost one of their top backs for the rest of the season due to injury. So that's going to be a huge blow to a Michigan team that was already limited in firepower. So now you talk about a situation where you're limited as far as what you have in your offensive backfield. And like I said, Underwood, I'm still not sold on him. I get it, he's a true freshman, but the hype is just Jackson had 112 and a touchdown running the football for Ohio State, and then you have Julian Sand, 23 of 31, 184 and 1. Look, them ain't Heisman numbers. That's all I'm gonna say. Next, Ohio State goes to 10-0. Indiana 31, they stay unbeaten. 31 after a 31-7 stomping of Wisconsin as Mendoza goes 299 and 4 scores, continuing his impressive march towards a Heisman. Becker had 5 grabs for 108 yards and a score as Indiana Indiana continues its march towards that Big Ten matchup that we're looking forward to seeing in just under 3 weeks. Then we see Tech wallop Central Florida 48-9 as Cameron Dickey had 2 scores on the day. Baron Morton was 14 of 20, 149 yards and a score. And he didn't play very long, as we saw Texas Tech was up 38 to 2 at the half, and that defense just continues to do what it does. And got to give a hometown gab out to my man Ramella Height once again. He had a sack on the day. Got to give a big time gab out for him. Had another good game, 4 tackles. Just continuing to do what he does. Big time gab out for him as he gets the Red Raiders march on to a 10-1 record and have a date basically in the Big 12 championship, barring a major catastrophe. In a game that was very interesting for about 3 quarters, it was the number 7 Ole Miss Rebels 34 and the Florida Gators 24. It was Chambliss with 3. This was a total round the room type of performance for the Ole Miss Rebels, as they got 224 yards rushing from Lacey and 3 scores. Chambliss had over 300 yards passing football. But the Gators were unable to score a single point, and this is why I am totally not sold on DJ Lagway, because Ole Miss's defense is not that good. You could argue their front four is very strong, but as far as a total defense, if they don't get pressure with their front four, not a very good defense. But as I said, there are weaknesses in this so-called 6th-ranked team. While Lane Kiffin is running around here talking about other jobs, he better be worried about the job at hand. To 9-1 and 6-1 in the Big 12 after their 44-13 thrashing of the TCU Horned Frogs. Now, me personally, I actually thought this game would be a lot closer, but you see McAllister for the Horned Frogs had 107 yards receiving. Bachmeier had 296 yards passing for BYU, as this game was not as close as it appeared at halftime. It was 27-10 at the half, but you could see that TCU was just outmatched, and you can honestly say that this BYU team is very pissed off about what happened. So, you can really look at this team and say they didn't take too kindly to that loss to Texas Tech, and they're really not taking it well. So that's what you want to see if you're a BYU fan. Meanwhile, Utah goes to 8-2 after a 55-28 beatdown in Waco of the Baylor Bears. Well, it was Robertson for Baylor that had 430 yards passing and 3 scores. The real story to this game was the fact that the Utah Utes were able to get 2 turnovers out of the Baylor Bears, which weren't necessarily the difference in the game, but the fact that Utah was able to run for over 380 yards, but they only possessed the ball for 27 minutes, whereas Baylor possessed it for 32-57. And when you look at this team, and I'm talking about Utah, for them to go to Waco and just absolutely run amok on this football team, it was an embarrassing display for Baylor, especially when you have an interception for a touchdown. That's not what you want to see. That is definitely not what you want to see, especially coming off of the fact that you just gave Utah a touchdown on offense, and then you get a pick 6, especially when it looks like you're driving the football. So you definitely don't want to have to deal with that after you've already gotten a change in momentum. And unfortunately, Baylor was unable to weather the storm. They had a couple of turnover on downs, and that's never what you want to see, is a consistent number of turnover on downs. I get it. You're trying to get back in the game, but when you have those turnover on downs, they are just absolutely compounded when you actually have a good drive and the opposing team turns right back around and they just run it back down and score. But as I said, after that, it was just, the floodgates had opened, and, Utah was able to get what they wanted on the ground. And as I said, Baylor, after many foresaw this team, including myself thinking a little bit about Baylor and their passing attack, actually thought that Baylor might be able to come in and be one of those college football playoff teams. And no, don't nobody start talking. I wasn't the only one. But Utah goes to 8-2, 5-2 in the Big 12, still with an outside chance to go to the championship game. Whereas Miami goes to 8-2 and 4-2 in conference play after a 41-7 thrashing of NC State. After there was so much talk, including myself, I'll admit it, that Carson Beck, who threw for 291 and 3 touchdowns, was going to let NC State hang around and do what Louisville did. They didn't allow that to happen. Pringle had 116 yards on the ground. Marion for Miami had 96 yards on 7 catches. As Miami continues its ascension, they are sitting at number 15 right now. But the AP polls, of course, jumped them again. Georgia Tech had a little bit of trouble with Boston College. Now, I'm going to say it like this. Anybody that sits there and looks at the 1-10 Boston College Eagles and says that they're trash, you obviously have not watched them. This is a football team that is absolutely determined. If they don't have anything else, they have a whole bunch of guts. They have a lot of guts. And if there's one thing that's going to keep the Yellow Jackets out, and this is the thing that I have a problem with the College Football Playoff Committee on, you give Alabama the benefit of the doubt. And Alabama's defense is not that good. I think it showed against Oklahoma, because Oklahoma does not have a great offense. It does not. It took that many turnovers for them just to score points. So I'm not talking about that game yet, but the reality of it is Georgia Tech, I enjoy watching them a hell of a lot more than I enjoy watching Alabama. Brad, I already know why. We don't need to comment on that. But I'm not being biased here. I'm telling you exactly how I feel. I think Georgia Tech's a better football team than Alabama is. Sorry, that's how I feel. You can look at it how you want. Haynes King, 371 passing the ball and 53 on the ground. Another 400-yard performance by Haynes King. And nobody can sit there and say with a straight face that this dude deserves the Heisman. And I know what people are going to say, well, he's passing against Boston College. Well, guess what? Now he has almost 2,250 passing and 10 scores and 2 interceptions. And you guys already know what he does on the ground. I mean, it's been well documented what this guy has done on the ground. And the thing that I get really sick and tired of hearing is that Haynes King is just a one-trick pony. The reality of it is that one-trick pony is just killing it right now. I mean, you're looking at a dude that has got 807 yards on the ground, 14 touchdowns, and he's got 24 total touchdowns. Ultimately, until people stop really hating on this guy and they really start appreciating his game, you're not going to see the beauty of it. He's like Notre Dame's Jeremiah Love. So many times I've said appreciate what you have, and I think Georgia Tech and I think college football does not appreciate these two guys enough. Just like people wanted us to appreciate.
Just like people wanted us to appreciate Travis Hunter last year. That's exactly what it needs to be, appreciating a great player. So, yeah, I think Haynes King is absolutely phenomenal. Like I said, a lot of close calls. They've got a matchup this week at home before they've got that killer matchup in Mercedes-Benz against Georgia. But they got to take care of business there first. Their attitude needs to be, we got to beat Pitt first, handle the ACC first. Then see what we can do at the college football playoff. But I think ultimately this was a look-ahead game for them. I think this is why it ended up the way it did. But Georgia Tech was able to pull it out. Then we got a nail biter in which Michigan survived. It took a game winner to knock out Northwestern. Now, let's not doubt Northwestern, but I'm going to say it from this standpoint. If you're struggling to put away a team like this and you want to call yourself a college football playoff contender this late in the season, I don't want nobody to get this construed. If you're this late in the season and you need a last-second field goal to beat a team like this, I get it. I understand. Because right now I'm looking at Michigan and I'm saying, okay, they got Maryland, then they got Ohio State. So I could see if they had Ohio State next week. That's not the case. You got Maryland next week. I mean, yeah. So, as I said, Michigan still has its opportunity to get back in this Big Ten if they can knock off Ohio State. If I recall correctly, if they pull this win out against Ohio State, they could very well, and they're still in the situation they're in right now, they could very well knock Ohio State out of the Big Ten championship game, and they would be playing Oregon. Oh, excuse me, Indiana. My bad. I'm just so used to saying that. Then we've got number 19, Virginia, just walking the dog with Duke, 34-17. I thought this game was going to be closer than that. I looked up in the fourth quarter. It was 34-3, and I was like, boy, don't I sound like a dummy. But Chandler Morris in his return threw for 316 and 2. Taylor had 133 yards on the ground, and Harris had 161 yards receiving. The Duke offense was just non-existent. I mean, it was zilch. Enough about that. Number 23, Tennessee, breezed 42-9 over New Mexico State. Aguilar had 204. Bishop had 80 yards rushing. And Brazel had 65 receiving. Blah. Then we had a big-time upset for all you Navy haters. Navy 41, South Florida 38. Navy now once again controls its own destiny heading back in to the final week. If they can pull off wins the next 2 weeks, well, actually the 1 week because they've got the Army-Navy game. As Blake Horvath came back and had 147 yards throwing the football as well as 60 yards on the ground. Guys, when was the last time we had a Navy quarterback have 100 yards passing? Byron Brown was absolutely phenomenal in this game. 327, 136. This was a dude that I honestly had for Heisman early on. You guys remember when he was blowing it up? He was throwing for over 200 yards and running for over 100. But unfortunately, the one thing Navy does, and does it exceptionally well, is they just absolutely control the pace of games. And this game was no different. They had the ball 35 times to the 25-yard mark for South Florida. Ultimately, they had 2 turnovers. Navy had 1 turnover. But when you play Navy and you turn the ball over more than they do, that's not good. I don't care if it's 1 turnover more. As you can see, the time of possession just absolutely dominated by Navy. And, of course, the rushing attack. Over 300 yards rushing for Navy, over 200 rushing for the Bulls. But at the same time, 356, when you have more turnovers, you have to be over. When Mr. CeeLo talks about the keys to the upset, you always have to go and look at the turnover battle. They won that one. Then you look at the total yardage. They did lose that one, and they lost the total first downs. But the biggest key is anytime you lose the turnover battle, you pretty much have to overcompensate that by 100 yards for each turnover. They did not do that. They only won total yardage by 40 yards. So needless to say, this is a situation where this football team was not able to overcome or get out of its own way. But once again, Navy now controls its own destiny with really 2 games left, the Memphis game and the Army game. So Memphis is not going to be an easy out. I mean, they're 4-3 in the conference, but at one time we were talking about them being in the college football playoff committee. Now, all of a sudden, back-to-back losses have not only put their college football playoff hopes and dreams on a plane, but now you're talking about not even winning a conference. So how quickly 2 weeks can change your season in college football, not just other sports, but college football. Finally, the upset that I did not see coming, but I did say something about it on the show. I said it would not surprise me if I looked up and Arizona had won this game over Cincinnati, but I did not take them to win. As Noah Fifita threw for 294 and a score, Walker for Cincinnati had 119 yards on 12 carries, which that would always question why in the world was he not running the football, because, of course, you don't see Cincinnati giving up 20 points in the second half and only scoring 10. But you look at how Arizona was able to control certain aspects of this game, and Cincinnati did not help by its 2 turnovers, which were the 2 interceptions by Sorsby. He did not have a good night. 15 of 28, 154. Anytime you're the favorite at home, the biggest thing you have to be able to do is take care of the football. And then we actually saw Arizona do something that is pretty much, I don't want to say it's out of the norm, but it's not really normal for Arizona, and that's run the football efficiently. They had a real balanced attack. You see 294 yards in the air and 181 on the ground. When you look at Cincinnati it prides itself on having good athletes in the secondary, guys that can hit and make plays. And unfortunately, this went against them tonight. As I said, they had 2 turnovers and they got destroyed in the time of possession. Almost 37 minutes to 23 minutes. That's not a combination for victory when you really expect a good game out of your rushing attack, which you had that. The only problem is you have to get better you have to get better quarterback play. And unfortunately for Cincinnati, they couldn't get that. But guys, let us get to the big shots, the big games for this week. Let us get to arguably one of the biggest, craziest games of the year. Because to start this game, Texas A&M quarterback Marcel Reed had not been taught much in the Heisman. There were some people that were putting him in the Heisman watch, but in the first half, he did not look like a Heisman candidate. He had thrown 2 interceptions, and South Carolina had a 30-3 lead. And I'm sure you've heard this over and over and over again about the comeback. But guys, let me tell you, when you look at the game and you say, okay, this can't be right. But when you look at the poise that Marcel Reed had, the composure, for him to just come back out there and just really put his thing down and just really assert himself. The way he did. It was nothing short of remarkable. And I'm going to be honest with you. If he is not in the Heisman race right now, I don't know who else needs to be. I mean, I'm just going to keep it a buck with you. 26-32, 22 touchdowns, 8 interceptions. Now, a lot of people they're gonna look at those interceptions and it's going to curve them a little bit. Look, this is one of those performances that if you're going to sit here and you're going to give Mendoza props for his performance, look, you got to give Marcel Reed performance. You don't spot somebody 27 points and then come back and erase that like that. And that don't mean anything. I'm talking about not only the playoff committee, but I'm also talking about the Heisman committee. Look, this is a remarkable game. I get it. People are going to say, well, it is South Carolina. But then I heard Booger McFarland say something. Lenore Sellers is just one of the best quarterbacks in the country.
Dumb shit! Dumb shit! Dumb shit! You fucking idiot. You son of a bitch. What the What a dumbass.
You're kidding, right? Look, you can't play a half or a quarter of football every 2 to 3 games. That's not how the Heisman works. When we look at this game, I'm looking at 23-15 first downs. I'm looking at 4 turnovers. 388 to 503. Now, granted, when you hear Mr. CeeLo's keys to victory, and I say you got to have 100 yards for every turnover that you're over your opponent, the difference here is that you're talking about a football team that's trying to get the upset. Oh, yeah. The first downs are telling, and then the yardage. Lenore Sellers ain't that dude. Because all we heard in the first half, the playmakers for South Carolina are doing this and they don't know. It was the fact that the daggum Texas A&M Aggies were just giving the ball away. Giving South Carolina short fields and momentum. And once the 12th man got going, that so-called one of the top quarterbacks in the country had no answer. And from there, the floodgates just opened. And then you didn't have a prayer. It was absolutely embarrassing. All you became was a footnote for Marcel Reed and the A&M Aggies. And this is where I'm going to be looking at the committee and seeing, are you going to keep it consistent across the board? Because I'm going to be honest with you. Outside of Oregon, Indiana ain't been tested. I'm just saying. I mean, if we're going to be consistent about, if we're going to do the SEC thing, we need to be consistent across the board. Because LSU got drugged by them. Missouri got drugged by them. And arguably, why Samford is on this schedule? And I'm going to be honest with you. If Texas plays like they did against Georgia, they're going to get drugged in Austin. And they're going to prove to the world that this ain't no fluke. And that Notre Dame was the one team that actually gave them a fight outside of Arkansas. Arkansas gave everybody a fight up until they lost that game, needless to say. But I'm looking at Texas A&M, and I'm just absolutely impressed with Marcel Reed. I still think he's getting better. I've got a lot of people that I've talked trash to the A&M fan base, and look, this team is insanely good. And now with the assertion of Ashton Bethel-Roman, 4 grabs, 139 yards, and a touchdown in this game, you look over and you see Mario Craver didn't have but 1 catch for 6 yards. It's almost like, is this guy dealing with something, or are they just preserving him? Because you already know Samford's not going to give them any issue. And then they're just going to be getting ready for Texas. KC Concepcion just continues to impress. 7 grabs, 158 yards. Did not have a touchdown, but he's still continuing to be that guy. Just say, don't sleep on Mario Craver, Texas. That's all I'm going to say. I know y'all ain't playing yet, but I promise you, you don't want to sleep on these guys. You sleep on them, they're going to burn you. But Texas goes to 10-0 and arguably is my number 1 team in the country. You heard it. But let's shift our way to the number 9 Fighting Irish facing off against the number 22 Pitt Panthers because somebody said that they were going to lose. I know, Brad. You can't listen. The more you hate, the more we win. So the only way you're going to be able to get it done is you're going to have to appreciate. You got to appreciate, man. You got to appreciate, man. Now, Notre Dame won the first down 20-17. The passing attack 20-12. Even though C.J. Carr was okay, he wasn't great. The running game once again dominated, 175 yards on the ground. Even though Pitt tried to keep us from running the football, I will say it wasn't dominant because ultimately, it wasn't overly impressive because Jeremiah Love was really the only individual for the Irish that was able to break loose. He had 23 carries, 147 yards, and a score. And you got to include him in the passing game. He had 2 for 20. But, it was Notre Dame's defense that really started in this one. And I said it on my show, Talk Like a Champion, that I was really more impressed with the fact that C.J. Carr made the right decisions. Although there were 2 that he made that were really costly. to the Irish, but he made some really good plays on that. Now, Pittsburgh, on the other hand, listen, they live and die by the blitz. And, ultimately you get there, and then there's times you get burned. And twice they got burned, and it wasn't necessarily because they blitzed. It was because they were so antsy and they jumped off sides where star receiver number 0, Malachi Fields, had 7 grabs for 99 yards and 2 scores. Tight end Eli Reardon, who's been a butt of a lot of jokes in Irish Nation about getting his first touchdown on the year, had 2 good opportunities, but he just stepped out of bounds and was not able to convert or do the tightrope, if you will. But all in all, I was not overly impressed. With Pittsburgh. Notre Dame's defense was just so stifling. And, looking at the teams that are in the playoff, we talk about Indiana's defense. We talk about Ohio State's. As I said, I'm not really sold on Ohio State's because they haven't been tested since Texas. And then looking at the game later on, I will tell you why I'm not impressed with their win over Texas. And then you subtly look over at a team like, Texas Tech, who has a really good front four. Georgia has some. They've still got to show me they can do more than what they did against Texas, which we'll allude to here shortly. There's really not a lot of great defenses out there. I just, like I said, I'm sold on Texas Tech's defensive front 7. I'm sold on Indiana's defense for the most part, not sold on Ohio State's. Georgia's just got to show me more. Texas A&M's front 4 is really good when they get you in positions where they're forcing you to throw the ball. So, if you can keep them off balance, they're a defense that you can have. But Notre Dame goes to 8-2, and Pittsburgh pretty much falls out of playoff contention, but they still have an outside chance to be in the ACC title game as they face off against Georgia Tech this week. So another big win for Notre Dame as they get somebody that is ranked in the College Football Playoff Committee's top 25. What you got to say now, haters? Next, we've got arguably a game that I just sat here and I said to myself, really? And this is nothing against Brent Venables. I think he's a great defensive-minded coach. I just sat here and thought that everybody that was making a big fuss about Alabama and what they could do, I just thought we were speaking a little bit too much out of turn. I really did. I thought they were speaking too much out of turn. And ultimately, when you look at how this game fell into place, all these turnovers, and this is a team that was coming off a bye, y'all. You know what I'm saying? This is what makes it so embarrassing. This is a team that was coming off a flipping bye, y'all. You ain't even supposed to look. This is one of those situations where you almost have to look at your team and say, "Hey, man, if we get into college football, this can't happen." Because I remember listening to an analyst and he said, and I quote, "Man, we won every category except the one that will cost you." And this is the one where Mr. CeeLo's keys to victory comes into play. Alabama had 23 first downs to Oklahoma's 12. But you always have to look at the keys to victory when it comes to how a team wins. When you get a defensive touchdown, and guys, I'm going to tell you right now, when you get a defensive touchdown, that is painful. That is absolutely painful when that happens. And see, ultimately, when you look at how this team was able to do what it did, you can look no further than the turnover that turned into points by Bowen, a former Notre Dame commitment, I might add. Happy for him, but realistically, I ain't scared of Oklahoma in the playoff. And I don't think there's a lot of teams that should be scared. Maybe the non-Power 5s. But I'll tell you right now, if they draw Navy, which they won't, that would not be a good matchup for them. Because the reality of it is this. I know I'm talking about the playoff race as opposed to the game. But when I watch this game, I'm sitting here thinking to myself, okay, Alabama's going to snap out of this. I did not once think that Oklahoma was dominating this game. I didn't. I think what Oklahoma did is they exposed something in that offensive line. They basically had Simpson rushing, and they had Simpson guessing, because there were times they would drop out of those blitzes, they would go up in them, and ultimately they had the offensive line so confused that they could not figure out what was what. And for the most part, Simpson looked confused off of a bye. That's not good. When your quarterback has had a bye and he looks confused, and realistically, Alabama's defense with John Mateer was not very good. And I know everybody kept saying, and see, this is the thing I got tired of hearing with the media, was that they're getting better as the year goes along. Look, this is not a good Oklahoma offense. It's not. I mean, look, 138 yards passing, 74 yards on the ground. And people are going to say, oh, that's a tribute to Alabama's defense. No, they weren't good against Michigan. Look, I'll give them somewhat credit on that defense. The defense is okay, but they ain't all that. Sorry. I mean, look, Alabama got 406 on them. 4 turnovers. Yeah. That's right. But as I said before, I thought Alabama was overinflated. I know Brad is one of those that is truly wanting to see them go bye-byes. I listen, you're not the only one. I don't think Alabama should be. It would not surprise me tomorrow when the committee comes out that they're either right behind Notre Dame, or they're slightly behind them. It's all going to depend on how these other conference championships shake out, or how they view these other conference winners. It's going to be interesting to see what they do with Miami. But Alabama falls at home to Oklahoma. I thought they should have fell further in the AP polls, but you can see what the bias is there after this loss to. And this is a bad loss. I don't care what the stats said and whatnot, but this is a bad loss when your defense plays that well. And you can't even say that well because Oklahoma's offense is suspect as well. But yeah, big win for them. Big win for them. As they go to 8-2, 4-2 in the conference, Alabama suffers its first defeat in conference. And we'll just have to see how the rest of this shakes out, with Alabama facing off against a nobody this week in Eastern Illinois, and on their way to Auburn, whom has not been a pushover. Meanwhile, Oklahoma has to continue to win out as they face unranked Missouri, and then they finish both games up at home, one against Missouri and one against LSU. Now we shift to a game that, in my opinion, was looking as though it was going to be a chaotic game and be crazy, because it was a rainy game. And you saw Gronkowski, who looked like he was going to put this game away. Unfortunately, it didn't work out that way, as Jaden Maava was able to do enough to get the Wheelers team to a victory. Brian Jackson had 4 carries for 14 yards, but he had 2 big touchdowns. But King Miller had a pretty good game at 83 yards rushing, and that's pretty impressive considering this is the Iowa Hawkeyes. But then you see Mekhi Lemon, who arguably is going to be the Biletnikoff winner this season. 10 grabs, 153 yards and a score. Impressive considering what Iowa has done. But Iowa led a lot of this game. It was 21-10 at the half, and then USC proceeded to score the final 16 points. It was almost like USC had trapped Iowa into thinking that, hey, we got this. We got this. And yeah, unfortunately, before you knew it, Iowa blinked, and boom, there you go. J.D. Maiava, along with Jaden Maiava, along with his duo of receivers, Makai Lemon and Jacoby Lane, once again, just being the difference here. They contained Jacoby Lane for the most part, but it was Makai Lemon that they couldn't do anything with. But then when you look over here at the statistical aspect of it, the stats are not up to USC standards offensively. They did have 360 total yards in this game to 320, which is abnormally high for Iowa. 254 in the air, 183 on the ground for Iowa, to 106 for USC, which is it's very unusual for Iowa to get that many yards rushing and they lose the game. Now, I will say this. Do I think if this game was in Iowa City, this game would be different? Absolutely. Because if this game is going to be played in Iowa City, this crowd does not have that effect. I think the crowd willed USC to a victory. And a lot of people will say, well, that's your opinion and this, that, and other. No, it's not an opinion. That's the way I looked at it. Because when you felt when this game was at halftime that the Iowa Hawkeyes had done everything right. That's the way I looked at it. I looked at it for a team that is as high-powered as the USC Trojans, for them to only score 10 points at the half. I was sitting there like, okay. Even Lincoln Riley, when they got ahead, you look at him and you say, you could see he was pumped when they got ahead. It had shades of that Illinois game early on. Yeah. And it's a gut-wrenching loss for the Hawkeyes, whom everybody's been giving respect to. You hate it for them. You really do. You hate it for them. And all you can say is, you got to get some different players over there. You got to get you can keep the same players, but you got to get at least one or two guys that are difference makers. Gronowski is one of those guys. He's one of those guys that is a huge type of quarterback that he knows what he's got. I guess you could say he's got semi a clutch gene, but it just hasn't been fully activated yet. Yeah. You got to get more from your quarterback position, but unfortunately, you're going to have to get a guy that has a big arm. Gronowski doesn't really have a big arm. He, however, does have that ability to see when big things are about to happen in big moments, that he has that ability. Unfortunately, that didn't happen in this game for the Iowa Hawkeyes, as their season is pretty much a wrap as USC continues to keep itself alive. Finally, we get to the game that everybody was looking forward to, but found out that on the scoreboard, it wasn't going to be that much fun. Now, I can't even hate on Brad for this one, as the Bulldogs pulled off the 35-10 victory over the Longhorns, as their season now is effectively over as far as the college football playoff. You got a whole bunch of people talking about if they can beat Texas Tech, they get back in here. Look, I'm not fixing to play that game because initially I told somebody the other day, look, I'm not fixing to sit here and play this game with you people that love the Southeastern Conference. I'm not going to sit here and play this whole, if they win this, they win that. No, I'm not going to do that. But what I will do, is this. If they can win, and what I mean by that is if they can win the Texas A&M game, then whoopee. And somebody else loses. You don't jump a bunch of teams because you knocked off a team that was previously undefeated. You don't do that. You don't automatically get the bid back in and you got walloped by one of the teams in there. That just isn't how it works. Now, if you wallop Texas A&M, that's a different story. Then we can have that discussion. But until that, no, we're not going to do that. But looking at the statistics, Georgia was 21 first downs to Texas's 15. Total yards, Texas only had 274 to Georgia's 357. And once again, Texas's glaring weakness was the running game and their offensive line, as they were only able to muster up 23 yards. I will say Georgia's defense looked a lot more stout because me and Brad had talked about it. He was trying to convince me of that, but you got to convince me better than this because, needless to say, you guys have had Texas's number. Now, I will take the crow on that one because I did feel like Texas was probably going to pull the upset, so I'm not going to shy away from that. However, I will say that the penalties were a big discrepancy here. Just saying, dogs. Just saying, Brad. I will say Gunnar Stockton was impressive. 24 of 29, 4 touchdowns and an interception for 229. Arch had 251, a touchdown and an interception. He did have some drops in this game, in all fairness. Arch had some balls that were dropped on the ground. You can't put this all on him. Whereas you had Stockton's guys, they're catching the football. So, Brad, I know you're going to be talking that trash about Arch. Arch ain't the problem in a lot of instances. I think ultimately the guy, he gave a valiant effort. Unfortunately, you've got to consistently get help from the guys around you. And unfortunately, he had no running game. And he ultimately didn't have much as far as his receivers at times. I mean, a lot of people will say, well, he's got to make them better. You can't make them catch the ball. So, I was impressed with the way Georgia's offense was methodically moving the ball, so people like Brad can stop criticizing Mike Bobo and throwing out there that he sucks and he's this, that, and other. He looked pretty impressive to me. Georgia handled the time of possession at over 35 minutes to only 24 for Texas, and it seemed like there were so many times they were going 3 and out. I mean, I honestly was watching this game after the Notre Dame game after the Oklahoma-Alabama game. And I was sitting there saying there was an SEC conspiracy to get 7 teams or 6 teams in there. And I was just like, really? I was just like, man, really? Come on, man. But as I was looking at this game and I was really concerned about Georgia's run defense. I mean, as I said, they keep talking about how Kirby gets better at this and that. Well, guess what? He gave up a seven-pointer in the third quarter. So you must be talking about the offense because they scored 21 in the fourth quarter. But, I think this is a time I've been hearing people talk about, Steve Sarkisian maybe looking at other positions and whatnot. Why would you do that? You got this team back to the prominence of where it is. Ultimately, this needs to be a situation where you and Arch need to get on the same page. However, I do think that this offensive line being very young, and a lot of people are going to say that this defense was very seasoned. I get it, yeah. But the reality of it is you lost a lot of big guys in that front. So while you do have a lot of good guys on that team, you did not have as many returning experience-wise on that defense. Then you look at Georgia, who seems to be peaking at the right moment, which could make for a really good collision course with a rematch for this college football playoff year. Come on, dogs. I'd love to knock you down twice, Brad. It's all love, brother. But Georgia goes on to win 35-10 and could possibly find themselves on an outside collision course on a shot to Atlanta. Unlikely, but it's possible because they own the tiebreaker with Ole Miss, and if Alabama gets beat, the possibilities are endless when it comes to that. Possibility Georgia could end up in Atlanta with a shot at A&M. And then Brad can put that money where his mouth is. But let's get with let's go to the AP polls because, guys, I'm going to tell you once again, I have an issue when I don't see the same type of falls or or risers that, you know, are, to me, parallel or equate to what you are selling. Because the truth of the matter is, this is what we're here for. We love that. We would love for the teams to settle these scores on the outside without all this outside interference. Of course, you got Ohio State, Indiana, and Texas A&M still sitting at 1, 2, and 3. I still think Texas A&M should be the number 1 team in the country. Everybody's sitting here saying, well, nobody beat this team. Well, guess what? Ohio State wasn't number 1 to start with, so no. Indiana is not showing me anything. The thing is, so many people are not looking at this team and A&M and, you know, considering them as one of the top teams in the country. Then you have Georgia. I will say in the coaches poll, Texas A&M got 2 votes, just for reference. But like I said, the AP 4th spot, Georgia at 9-1 went up a spot. Ole Miss went up a spot. To me, Ole Miss ain't been tested enough. Sorry, they haven't. Oregon, number 6, same here. But here's the thing. Oregon has an opportunity, y'all, to play themselves into a major position over the next couple of weeks. Now, that's why I say this has a chance to play itself out. Because right now, you're looking at an Oregon team that has a tough 2 final games. They're hosting USC, and then they got to go to Seattle to face a Washington team with absolutely nothing to lose. Then you look down at number 6, which is Texas Tech. They moved up 2 spots. Then you got Oklahoma, who jumped 3 spots, jumped Notre Dame, and it's just like, really? Is that how we doing it? Because there's no number 7, so it would have been Oregon at number 6 and Texas Tech at number 7. And like I said, Notre Dame stayed put, and everybody moved up. And as I said, Notre Dame beat the number 22 team in the college football playoff rankings and went nowhere. And even the coaches poll moved them nowhere. The hate is real. Alabama dropped 6 to number 10, pretty much mirroring the coaches poll. Then you got BYU, who moved up 1 spot. Georgia Tech was number 12 in the coaches poll. Vanderbilt's number 12. Boo. And then you have Utah at number 13, Miami at number 14, Georgia Tech at number 15. And for what it's worth, rounding out the top 25, USC is number 16, same as the coaches poll. Texas falls 7 spots to number 17. They move to 18 in the coaches poll. Michigan is below Texas. They stay put. Virginia goes up 1, Tennessee up 1. They just trying to find a way to get Tennessee back in there, so when Vanderbilt and Tennessee play, they can have this damn argument about why they should be in the college football playoff. They are steady trying to do it. You can see it. James Madison is up 3. North Texas back in that top 25 fold. Missouri is 7-3, back in the top 25 again, ain't they? Tulane 8-2, Houston 8-2. Pretty much the same thing as the coaches poll, but I just have a huge issue when I start looking at teams that are just slowly creeping back up there. Because I can tell you right now, Vanderbilt would not beat Utah or Miami. I would even argue they wouldn't beat Georgia Tech. And this is supposed to be AP people that watch this. They don't watch all the games. Hell, I can't watch them all. I try to, like Brad does, and I'm sure some of you do. But you can't watch all of them. It's just impossible. I got plenty of TVs, iPads, and phones. Still can't enjoy them like I want to. But one day I will. One day on this God green earth, I'm going to be able to watch all the games. Let me know what you guys think about week number 12, as we are 2 weeks away from Championship Saturday. Whoa, I can't wait. Guys, make sure you leave your comments down below. And if you are a first-time subscriber, please put your name down below. Make sure you hit that bell notification, thumbs up the show, and make sure you are subscribed. Even if you are subscribed, all my parishioners, the ones that are subscribed, make sure you check and see if you are still subscribed, because you might think you're subscribed and you are not. Also, make sure you go over to the Facebook, Gridiron Gab Triple Option. Make sure you check out the page as well as joining the group. Make sure you join as well as add us as a friend. Finally, make sure you go to my Instagram at Mr. CeeLo so you can keep up with all the shenanigans I will be caught up in. And make sure you go check out the LV website. If you need to, hit rewind on the show. Scroll over during the show and make sure you click on that QR code so that you can have that link and go check out those wonderful products on their website. High quality product for high quality people. But until the next time, same Gab channel, same Gab platform.